Step away from the vehicle right now! Ma'am, do not resist.
Step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them. The command cut through the quiet Sunday morning like a siren. The black Rolls-Royce Phantom rolled to a smooth stop beneath a canopy of oak trees in one of Washington, D.C.'s wealthiest neighborhoods. Its polished paint reflected the flashing red and blue lights dancing across the empty street. People walking their dogs slowed to watch. A man watering his front lawn lowered the hose. Two teenagers waiting for a rideshare instinctively reached for their phones. Officer Brad Keller strode toward the luxury sedan with long, impatient steps, his hand already resting on the grip of his service weapon. He didn't approach like someone conducting a routine traffic stop. He approached like he had already decided the outcome. Inside the driver's seat sat Maya Carter. She wore a navy blue blazer over a simple white blouse. Her posture calm, both hands resting openly on the steering wheel, exactly where every driver's education instructor in America tells you to place them during a police stop. She lowered the window halfway. "Good morning, officer," she said evenly. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" Brad ignored the question. Instead, his eyes swept across the handcrafted leather interior, the polished walnut trim and the unmistakable spirit of ecstasy, hood ornament standing proudly above the grille. His expression hardened. "You expect me to believe this car belongs to you?" The words hung in the air. Maya answered without raising her voice. "Yes, sir. I have my driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. They're all available if you'd like to see them." Brad let out a short laugh. It wasn't the laugh of someone amused. It was the laugh of someone convinced he had already uncovered a lie. "You people always have paperwork." The words caused several nearby neighbors to exchange uncomfortable glances. The younger officer arriving behind Brad slowed his pace. Something about the stop already felt wrong. Maya kept her breathing steady. Years of leadership had taught her that panic often gives anger exactly what it wants. "I will cooperate with every lawful instruction," she replied. "I only ask that you tell me the reason for the stop." Brad stepped closer until he was standing beside the driver's door. His reflection stared back at him from the mirror like black paint. "You don't ask the questions," he snapped. "I do." The neighborhood grew strangely quiet. Even the birds seemed to disappear beneath the flashing lights. The younger officer finally spoke. "Brad Dispatch didn't report this vehicle stolen." Brad never looked at him. "I'll decide what's suspicious." Without warning, he struck the hood of the Rolls-Royce with the side of his baton. Bang. The sharp metallic sound echoed down the street. Several people flinched. One woman covered her mouth in disbelief. Maya's eyes briefly moved toward the dent, beginning to form in the handcrafted aluminum hood. She said nothing, not because she was afraid, because experience had taught her that the first person to lose control often loses credibility. Brad interpreted her silence as weakness. He leaned closer to the open window. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. Maya slowly nodded. "I'm complying." She carefully reached for the door handle, exactly as instructed, moving slowly enough that every bystander could see. She posed no threat across the street. Another phone was raised to record, then another within seconds. Half a dozen cameras were pointed toward the scene. No one standing there realized they were witnessing the first moments of an encounter that would soon dominate national headlines, ignite a federal investigation, and forever change the careers of everyone wearing a badge. On that quiet suburban street, Officer Brad Hollister stood beside the damaged Rolls-Royce, with his jaw clenched, refusing to believe anything he had just heard. The woman in front of him had not raised her voice once. She had not insulted him. She had not resisted. Even after watching her luxury car absorb the force of his angry kick, she remained remarkably calm. That calmness unsettled everyone watching, far more than shouting ever could. The growing crowd sensed the atmosphere changing. People standing outside nearby stores quietly lifted their phones. Recording every second, some whispered to each other, while others exchanged uncomfortable looks. What had started as another aggressive traffic stop was quickly becoming something much bigger. Officer Melissa Grant stepped closer to Brad, lowering her voice. "Brad, maybe we should verify her identification before this goes any further." Brad barely looked at her. "I already know exactly what this is." He snapped another fake federal badge. "Another stolen luxury car. She's playing the victim." The woman slowly turned her eyes toward Melissa instead. "I understand you're doing your job. she said with remarkable composure, "but your partner has already crossed several legal and ethical lines. He damaged private property without cause, used discriminatory language, and detained me without explaining any lawful reason." Melissa swallowed hard, unlike Brad. She had attended enough advanced training to recognize confidence that came from genuine authority rather than arrogance. The woman never exaggerated. She never threatened. She simply stated facts. That alone made Melissa increasingly uneasy. Brad ignored every warning sign. "You expect me to believe someone like you owns an $800,000 Rolls-Royce?" He laughed loudly so everyone around could hear. "That's the oldest scam in the book." Several people in the crowd immediately reacted. An elderly veteran shook his head. "Son, that's not something an officer should be saying." A young mother standing nearby hugged her daughter a little tighter. "This is exactly why people record everything now," she quietly whispered. Brad pointed toward the luxury vehicle again. "I've seen this before, borrowed car. Fake documents, expensive clothes to fool people." The woman looked directly into his eyes. "My success doesn't require your approval, officer." Her words were calm, but they landed with incredible force. "Success doesn't require your approval." Several people in the crowd quietly nodded. One college student recording the incident muttered that right there, everybody needed to hear that the statement wasn't about wealth. It wasn't about status. It was about dignity, about refusing to let prejudice define someone's value. Melissa finally spoke again. "Ma'am, would you be willing to let us verify your credentials?" The woman offered a respectful smile. Of course, she carefully reached into her designer handbag. Without making any sudden movements, every movement was deliberate, professional, transparent. She slowly removed a slim leather credential holder. Not flashy, not oversized. Just simple black leather, carrying years of federal service. She extended it toward Melissa instead of Brad. "I'd prefer she verify it." Melissa accepted the credential with both hands. The moment she opened it, her breathing noticeably changed. The quality alone immediately stood apart from every fake identification she had encountered during her career. Official federal seals, multiple security markings, embedded holographic authentication, federal access credentials. Everything appeared authentic. Still, procedure required confirmation. She quietly stepped toward her patrol vehicle. Brad folded his arms confidently. "Told you. Give dispatch 2 minutes." Melissa, radio dispatch. Dispatch requesting immediate federal credential verification. The dispatcher acknowledged. Several long seconds passed. The crowd remained silent. Even traffic seemed quieter. Brad smirked. "You know what happens when this comes back fake?" The woman answered peacefully. "I know exactly what happens when the truth arrives." Those words lingered in the air nearby. A teenage boy watching beside his grandfather asked softly, "Grandpa, why isn't she angry?" The older man smiled sadly. "Because real strength isn't always loud." The answer stayed with everyone close enough to hear. True strength often looked exactly like this, remaining composed while someone else lost control. Across the parking lot, another patrol unit slowly arrived. After hearing radio traffic requesting assistance, 2 additional officers stepped out. They approached without immediately choosing sides. One of them quietly noticed a visible boot dent on the Rolls-Royce's handcrafted body panel. His eyebrows lifted. "Who authorized damage to civilian property?" Nobody answered. Brad avoided looking at the vehicle. The silence itself became an answer. Seconds later, dispatcher's voice finally returned through Melissa's radio. The dispatcher sounded noticeably different than before. Professional, focused, almost unusually careful. Unit 12 standby. "We are conducting priority confirmation with federal headquarters." Melissa's heartbeat accelerated. Priority confirmation that wasn't normal. Brad rolled his eyes dramatically. "They're wasting everyone's time." The woman simply folded her hands in front of her. She looked toward the American flag, waving above a nearby government building. Her expression reflected neither fear nor revenge, only quiet confidence. She had spent decades serving the same country, whose uniform now stood in front of her. She understood something Brad had forgotten. A badge was never meant to prove superiority. It was meant to demonstrate responsibility. The growing crowd wasn't just watching an argument anymore. They were witnessing 2 completely different ideas of leadership, one driven by ego, the other guided by discipline. No one spoke as Melissa's radio suddenly crackled to life once again, and the first words from dispatch caused every officer standing there to instinctively straighten their posture. The parking lot had gone completely silent. The officers who had been shouting only moments earlier now stood frozen, their confidence replaced by uncertainty. Every shopper who had pulled out a phone lowered it just enough to watch what would happen next. The black woman beside the damaged luxury car didn't celebrate. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked at the shattered side mirror, the dent running across the handcrafted door, and took one slow breath. Her calm confused everyone. Most people expected anger after what had just happened. Instead, they saw composure, the kind built from years of discipline, sacrifice, and responsibility. Officer Brad swallowed hard. His partner glanced between the woman and the government credentials that had just been verified through dispatch. Every second felt longer than the last. The senior supervisor who had rushed to the scene stepped forward, removing his sunglasses before speaking. "Ma'am, I believe we owe you an explanation." She looked at him with steady eyes. "No," she answered quietly. "You owe every person watching this an example." Those words landed harder than any argument ever could. The crowd became even quieter. Parents standing beside their children listened carefully. Teenagers recording the encounter stopped whispering. Even the officers who had arrived as backup remained still, realizing this moment had become about something much larger than one damaged Rolls-Royce. "My name is Vanessa Carter." She continued, "Today you learned who I am because of a credential. But an hour ago you believed I deserved to be treated differently because of what you assumed." No one interrupted. "I shouldn't have to carry a federal identification card for someone to speak to me with dignity." Officer Brad lowered his head. He replayed every word he had shouted only minutes earlier. He remembered kicking the vehicle before asking a single question. He remembered assuming the car couldn't possibly belong to her. Those assumptions now echoed inside his own mind. Louder than any siren, the supervisor turned toward his officers. "Our department trains us to investigate facts, not appearances." His voice remained controlled, but disappointment was impossible to hide. "If we abandon that principle, we fail every citizen we swore to protect." Several officers nodded silently. Vanessa wasn't interested in embarrassing anyone. She had spent more than 2 decades working alongside local departments across the country. She understood how stressful policing could be. She also understood that one careless decision could destroy years of public trust. "I've worked with extraordinary police officers," she said, "men and women who risk their lives every day." Without asking for recognition, she looked toward the younger officer standing behind Brad. "Some of the finest public servants I've ever met wear the same uniform you're wearing right now." The younger officers listened carefully. "But respect," she continued, "must be given before it can be expected in return." The supervisor nodded. "You're right." He turned toward everyone gathered. "Today's incident will be documented completely. There will be a full internal review. Accountability isn't punishment. Accountability is how trust is rebuilt." A woman in the crowd slowly began clapping. Then another person joined. Soon dozens of people applauded, not because someone had won an argument, but because they had witnessed leadership replacing pride. Brad finally stepped forward. His voice lacked the arrogance everyone had heard earlier. "Ma'am, I'm sorry." The words came slowly. "I judged you before I knew anything about you." He looked at the damaged vehicle. "I can't undo what happened." Vanessa studied him for several seconds. "A sincere apology isn't measured by words," she replied gently. "It's measured by what changes after today." Those words stayed with every officer present nearby. A young black girl stood beside her mother, holding a small shopping bag. She looked at Vanessa with admiration. "Mom," she whispered. She stayed calm. Her mother smiled proudly. Real strength isn't about shouting louder. It's about standing taller without losing your character. Vanessa overheard the conversation. She walked over and knelt, so she was at eye level with the little girl. "Never let someone else's assumptions decide your future." The child nodded. "Work hard. Learn everything you can. Believe in yourself, even when others don't. Your success will speak long after the noise disappears." The girl's eyes lit up with hope. Several people nearby wiped away tears. One elderly veteran quietly removed his cap. "I served this country for 30 years, he said today. I was reminded what leadership actually looks like." Vanessa thanked him with a respectful nod. Tow trucks, investigators, and department representatives soon arrived. But the most important thing that remained wasn't the damaged Rolls-Royce. It was the lesson everyone carried home. Justice begins with fairness. Authority means nothing without humility. And true leadership is revealed not when everything goes right, but when people choose integrity after everything has gone wrong. That evening, videos of the encounter spread across the country, not because of a luxury car or a government credential, but because millions of people saw the power of remaining calm, demanding accountability, and refusing to answer disrespect with hate. Some viewers praised the officers who accepted responsibility. Others admired Vanessa's grace under pressure. Many simply reflected on how quickly assumptions can change lives. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. What moment stood out to you the most? Do you believe respect should always come before judgment? Your perspective could inspire someone else reading the comments. And if you enjoy powerful stories about justice, integrity, courage, and people who choose character over anger, let us know what kind of story you'd like to see next. Your suggestions help shape future episodes, and your voice is an important part of this community.